old baby. So a 3-month-old boy is brought to the emergency department for a persistent cough and difficulty in breathing. He was born at 34 weeks gestation after preterm labor, and a complete course of maternal betamethasone was given. His mother had a diet-controlled gestational diabetes. A maternal first cousin died of an unspecified cause in early infancy, and this child weighed 17 grams. He required brief continuous positive air pressure therapy, but was soon weaned to room air within 24 hours of life. His NICU course was prolonged due to hypotonia and poor oral motor coordination. Results of brain MRI and 2 metabolic screens, Prader-Willi gene testing were normal. His swallow study demonstrated poor coordination without aspiration. After 7 weeks of stay in the hospital, he was discharged home on bolus nasogastric feeds, and he was tolerating the nasogastric feeds with normal urinary outputs. And there are no sick contacts. So anybody would like to take up from here, or you wish to go me ahead? Tushar?
Yeah, Naresh bhai is raising hands. Naresh bhai?
Naresh?
Apple iPhone, I think, is Naresh bhai. Apple's iPhone. Am I right, Naresh bhai? Just raise your hand once again, please. So he'll unmute you, yeah.
Okay. It's slow, actually.
Yeah, the network issue. Yeah.
Weight of the child at discharge.
Weight of the child at discharge. Let me see if that information is there in the next slide. Any particular reason for asking that question?
Child had a failure to thrive, or child was gaining good weight?
Okay. So how does that help our thought process?
A child otherwise having palatopharyngeal incoordination,
right,
and associated brain damage or a brain malformation, it will differentiate at this stage.
This child, as far as we know, had a very brief requirement of resuscitation, and he was weaned to room air very shortly after his
palatopharyngeal incoordination.
Yeah, but his MRI was normal, Naresh bhai, so I think we can rule out the brain malformation.
And since I think the baby was anyway on nasogastric feeds, so probably his weight gain must have been good. We'll see.
Dr. S. Kumar has put something in the chat. Sama sir.
Okay.
He's saying whether it is do you want him to talk? Then we can unmute.
Isn't it SMA type 1? He is saying.
Yeah. Priyanka Patel also says SMA.
I mean, we'll see that.
Yeah, sir, it could be SMA type 1.
Sure, we would keep all the possibilities in mind. But whatever has been given to us, we don't have enough information about his limb movements, about other physical findings. So it will be slightly premature to come to the diagnosis. But suffice it to say that this child has presented us with hypotonia, which was pretty long. And they have done certain tests to rule out some of the causes, like a brain malformation, a metabolic screen, and PW gene. So those 3 possibilities have been excluded.
Yeah. So if I want to venture whatever analyze the information given to us right now,
Yeah.
we are ruling out central causes of majority of the central causes of hypotonia because the MRI is normal. There is no mention of dysmorphism anywhere. The metabolic screen is also normal, and Prader-Willi, which is one of the common conditions giving rise to a combined or pure central hypotonia, has been ruled out. So if at all we are thinking about hypotonia with a muscular cause, the only other issue is that here there is involvement of skeletal muscle as well as non-skeletal muscle in the form of poor oromotor coordination and swallowing difficulties. So we'll have to see whether there is any other involvement of the cervical cord or peripheral or the lower motor neuron.
And at the same time, we would keep in back of mind a slight suggestion of a family history. I mean, that may.
So family maternal cousin who is positive, and this is a boy, if that is also a boy, then we are either looking at mitochondrial inheritance or we are looking at autosomal dominant inheritance.
Okay.
Because X-linked recessive also could be there actually.
Right. So we have very sketchy information at this point of time, limited information, but I think you have done a good job of analyzing whatever information we have thus far. So, Tushar, can you keep looking at the chat box and respond?
Yes, I will.
It will be difficult.
So just one question. If I look at the chat box, should I give you the answer or just the name of the person who is talking? Then you can unmute them.
I mean, you could handle it at your end. It will be easier.
Okay.
If you want me to respond, I'll do that.
Okay.
Okay. Now, on examination, he is an febrile child who is normotensive, fully saturated, tachypnic, and with mild distress. Now he says that the weight at 3 months is 5.5 kg and length of 60 centimeter and head circumference of 39 centimeter. So I would think that he has done pretty well on nasogastric supplements. He's a non-dysmorphic with a soft fontanelle. He has moderate intercostal retractions with transmitted upper airway sounds. Cardiac auscultation reveals a regular rate and rhythm with a soft systolic ejection murmur with no gallops. He has normal capillary refill and strong femoral pulses. Abdomen is soft without hepatosplenomegaly. Neurological examination reveals diffuse hypotonia, severe head lag, and 1+ reflexes. So, do we take it from here?
I'm waiting for people to respond to
Yeah.
talk. You could either raise your hand or it would be even simpler to just make your video on. So automatically I will make it so that the video will come up and then Samar sir can make it unmute. Dr. Akash wants to know what are the ocular movements.
This much the information to us.
Okay.
Why he is interested in ocular movement? I mean,
are you able to make me co-host? Then
yeah.
I may be able to unmute people so that you can focus on the presentation.
I'll do that.
He says because ocular movements are normal in SMA, Dr. Akash says.
I thought he would be considering something where their ocular movements are involved. So that could be another way to look at it.
Dr. Akash, you are unmuted if you want to speak.
There is some background noise going on, I think. Some fan.
Dr. S. Kumar, I have muted him, that's fine.
Yeah.
Sir, ocular movements are usually normal in SMA, sir.
Yeah.
The extraocular muscles are not involved.
Okay.
That's why I am asking this.
So to differentiate from neuromuscular junction involvement versus SMA, that is what you are saying?
No, sir.
But I would pay attention to 1+ reflexes, which I thought would be completely absent in a SMA.
Absolutely.
So,
Sama sir, please elaborate on that point. It's a very important point. Why are you saying that for SMA
because,
only?
yeah, because in any neuropathy or radiculopathy or anterior horn cell disease, the reflexes would be absent. Whereas in muscular disease, the reflexes could be elicitable. In a central lesion, the reflexes could be normal or exaggerated. So that gives us a good idea about the location.
Yeah, SMA being an anterior horn cell problem, like polio, it will have 0 reflexes and nothing like depressed or 1+.
So as we discussed this particular case, as Tushar had already pointed out, there is no dysmorphism. And
Dr. Umesh wants to know whether there is any fasciculations or tongue atrophy.
no information on that. I mean, this is the information we have.
Sure.
But I would again elaborate the same way as I was responding to Akash, that similarly, if fasciculations are in mind to consider SMA, the same logic would apply here, that reflexes were elicitable. Now, lab examination reveals a normal complete blood cell count and complete metabolic panel with a markedly elevated serum creatinine kinase level. And a chest radiograph reveals mild atelectasis with moderate cardiomegaly. So this is an additional information now coming up. Any responder?
So what I was saying earlier also, my algorithm for a hypotonic infant starts by saying, is it hypotonia or no hypotonia? Confirm hypotonia. The second step would be whether this is a central cause of hypotonia or peripheral cause of hypotonia. Here, along with all the other things that we have mentioned, not repeating them, you also now given us information that there is severe head lag and there is severe weakness. So severe head lag goes in favor of peripheral hypotonia compared to a central hypotonia. And the reflexes are also depressed, 1+, which also goes in peripheral. Now amongst peripheral, Sama sir, you already said that if the reflexes are present, that almost rules out anterior horn cell and neuropathies.
Right.
So that leaves us with muscle and neuromuscular junctions. So we have to debate between those two. Now, any child with cardiac problem and who has hypotonia, we would think in one particular condition only. So I would wait for you to show me the ECG and other things. I'm not discussing that part.
Yeah. There are a lot of...
Dr. Akash has asked whether it is Pompe's disease. And Dr. Priyanka Patel has written, going in line of myopathy, any diurnal variations are there or not there?
I think I shall be repeating myself very frequently by saying that I have only the information which I have shared with you. I mean, rest all will be a conjecture. So we have to confine ourselves with the limitations of a case which we have picked up from other sources. So.
Naresh Bhai says it's likely to be Pompe's.
Yes. There are 6-7 comments in the chat box, Tushar.
Yes, I have been through all of them actually now.
Right.
So Dr. Naresh Bhai, Priyank Patel, Akash Dodia, Dr. Khurana, we have covered all of them, at least on my chat box.
Yeah.
That's the last.
Okay. So this is the revealing EKG, which shows a short PR interval and giant QRS complex with ST segment elevations and reciprocal depressions in the other leads. So I think this makes a pretty clear diagnosis by now? Jagdish has raised hands.
Sir, familial periodic paralysis sort of?
What is the cause of shortened PR interval? That would give you the clue.
Yeah. I mean, with a hypotonia, with CPK raised, with cardiomegaly on X-ray in an infant, with a possible family history, and this characteristic EKG, we are left with, I think, no differential diagnosis here. Would you agree, Tushar, on this point?
Yeah, I agree, but I have a few pointers which I am not very comfortable with to make this diagnosis. But we will discuss that once we come to that point. I mean, that is my personal take.
Okay. Now, the echo further confirms what we have been all along thinking about this case, and it shows very thick right ventricular cavity. I mean, cavity reduced with the wall thickness, and the left ventricle also showing the same story. So there is a lot of concentric hypertrophy of the ventricles. So this further, adds and makes our case stronger for the diagnosis of Pompe's disease. Anybody would like to comment on this?
Anybody doesn't like any points which are, means what are the points which are not fitting into Pompe's or unusual, I would say, for Pompe's? Sometimes you have some findings which are just distractors and they just happen to be there. You have no control on them.
Yeah.
Like for example, this one, maternal cousin having death in early infancy would not fit with Pompe's because Pompe's is an autosomal recessive disorder. So there is no reason for the maternal cousin to have the same disease unless there is consanguinity here and consanguinity there, or it is something like we discussed earlier. They are from a particular community where there is a lot of, it's a very close-knit community and there are marriages within the community. Sama sir, I wanted your opinion whether we see Pompe's presenting in newborn age group on day 1, day 2. That I thought was a bit unusual.
I mean, all these genetic diseases have a very variable kind of phenotype, and depending on the severity of the enzyme deficiencies, I mean, I would put it that way, that the phenotype could vary. Like we have in all the diseases, depending on the severity, especially those which involve the enzymes, on the degree of enzyme deficiency.
But only thing is, all the manifestations of Pompe's being of a storage disorder, it requires a certain time before it manifests, especially.
I'll come to that, Tushar, in subsequent slides in older children and adolescents. The presentation is different in those people.
Yes, please go ahead.
So there are no more comments or questions on this?
No, nothing in the chat.
I mean, just one small point that we have been discussing about the differentiation between the central and peripheral causes, not related to this case, but one point I would like to make, that a child with a peripheral cause of hypotonia could have a birth asphyxia associated, and some children could definitely overlap. So it's good to have a kind of a structure to differentiate between central and peripheral. We must always keep in mind that there could be a lot of overlap.
Yes, yes.
So this child's blood test was positive for deficiency of alpha glucosidase, and additional discussion with the family revealed that a first cousin died of an enzyme deficiency, later found to be Pompe's disease, and the family agreed to the enzyme replacement therapy. And after 3 months of treatment, this child showed some improvement, but had continuous dependence on NG feeds. So the point is that it is not a panacea that it will completely revert the, it may mitigate the clinical symptomatology and make the child better. So these are some of the details of the glucosidase deficiency. As we know, this is a lysosomal enzyme which causes degradation of glycogen to glucose. And when this enzyme is missing, glycogen gets stored in the lysosomes. And there are a number of mutations which are described. And as we say, there are infantile forms and juvenile and adult forms that which I just made a reference in previous slide. And surprisingly, this juvenile and adult forms are commoner as compared to the infantile form, as you had already pointed out. Now, without going into the great deal of details here, one point which I would like to highlight is that older children and adolescents generally do not have cardiomegaly associated with late onset POMP. This is a very important, something new which I learned when I was preparing this case. So this is important to realize that you may not have cardiomegaly or cardiac failure as a presentation, and surprisingly older children can have a presentation like limb girdle paralysis. So
and when they have muscle weakness, it is, I mean, respiratory difficulties, it is sometimes more because of the diaphragmatic muscle rather than the cardiac related respiratory problem.
Yes, that is true. So we'll skip the treatment part because that is enzyme replacement therapy, and it makes life little better, not completely normal, and depends on how soon you have started. So it is a hypotonia with cardiomegaly in infantile form where biventricular hypertrophy is there, and a short PR interval on EKG is very, very suggestive. Juvenile or adult onset Pompe disease should be considered in patients with progressive weakness, especially in the limb girdle distribution. And early diagnosis is important to allow for enzyme replacement therapy, which reduces the risk of death and the need for mechanical ventilation. So these are the take-home messages from this presentation. So I would conclude this case here. I'll invite questions and comments on this, then we'll move on to the second case.
There's nothing in the chat box. If anybody wants to comment, please either raise your hand or put it on the chat box, please. Dr. Agarwal wants to know, Navya Agarwal, about short PR interval.
Yeah.
Your comments.
I mean, I could not find a specific reason for a short.
So whatever information I have, Samar sir, is that because of the glycogen deposition,
Yeah.
in that the conduction is faster.
Okay.
Because of the glycogen, and hence there is shorter PR interval.
Right.
I don't remember the reference, but this is my understanding.
Sure. And here one point more, that if you have a kind of hypertrophic cardiomyopathy in an infant, the other important genetic disorder to be considered is Noonan syndrome, which is a very important cause of cardiomyopathy in young children. So do we move to the next case?
Please.
So hypotonic newborn is the second case from Neo Review. This patient is a full-term male infant and fourth child of.
So you went back.
Okay. No.
Correct. Okay.
This patient is a full-term male infant and fourth child of non-consanguineous parents. He was conceived naturally and his mother was well throughout the pregnancy. An amniocentesis performed at 17 weeks of gestation showed normal chromosomes 46XY, and there was late onset growth restriction around 32 weeks of gestation, and it was symmetrical with all parameters being around 10 centi. No fetal anomalies were detected in antenatal scans. The infant was delivered at 38 weeks of gestation. He was vigorous at birth with good ABGAS score and a birth weight of 2365. So an IUGR baby who had no perinatal event and was born with a very good ABGAS score. So probably the hint is to exclude HIE here as such. The infant was reported to be hypotonic, lethargic, and sucking poorly. He was quiet and had a weak cry with minimal grimacing to painful stimulus. He had limited peripheral movements, both proximal and distal, with frog-like posturing of his lower limbs and marked head lag at 4 hours of age. Any comments here?
Nothing coming in the chat box. Anybody wants to make a comment on what are the possibilities here? Okay. Naresh Bhai says SMA type 1.
Okay. I mean, we should first analyze the topography of the hypotonia, and the final diagnosis could wait for a while because I would
I would have probably given discount for a child being preterm, 32 week. And
no, this child is 38 weeks, I think. 38 weeks. 38 weeks IUGR.
Okay. Sorry, that 32 week was a fetal ultrasound report.
I mean, what I'm saying is this child has complete head lag. This child has a frog-like posture with lower limbs. I mean, there are paucity of movements along with hypotonia.
Agreed.
And probably he has the neck sucking and weak cries, because whenever there is a weak cry, you would always consider if there is an intercostal muscle involvement and the child is not able to generate good vital capacity. So is there a respiratory muscle involvement? So that would be another thing which I would consider. And then a very minimal grimacing to painful stimuli would probably say that there is a fascial muscle involvement as well.
Yeah.
So this is the information, and this is, I think we will deduce from the information which is available to us. Any other comment on this?
Hypotonia with marked weakness by Dr. Katiara, and Naresh Bhai says why amniocentesis was done. Any other things information we have?
No.
And he thinks probably this is significant anterior horn cell involvement.
Okay.
I would still stay with a lower motor neuron involvement, maybe anterior horn, maybe even muscle itself, because many myopathies may also present in a similar fashion.
Right. Okay. His muscle bulk was preserved and no muscle fasciculation were seen. Deep tendon reflexes were normal. This is a googly here.
Yeah.
And he had a poor suck and rooting reflex. His pupils were normal and reactive to light. So where does this take us? This reflexes normal is completely ruled
So
out.
anterior horn cells are definitely out.
Yes.
And so are nerves. You are either at NM junction or with muscle, but NM junction doesn't present this way because there is no variation, though in congenital myasthenia gravis there may not be a diurnal variation always, but they don't have smooth muscle involvement, which is seen over here. Am I right? The previous slide had smooth muscle involvement also.
Yeah, I mean, swallowing was
of it.
Yeah. Okay.
Dr. Akash wants to know head circumference. Maybe you will tell him in some time.
If he said all the parameters were symmetrically involved and 10 percentile.
10%.
So, yeah. So what Akash specifically has in mind asking that question?
Akash, you can unmute yourself. He says torch infection.
Torch infection. I mean, torch infection presenting as generalized hypotonia would be agreeable, but generally speaking, just based on IUGR, I will not make a diagnosis of torch infection.
Dr. Naresh says neuromuscular junction should have MS atrophy. I believe he means muscle atrophy.
At 4 hours of age. Okay.
So whether this is still we are thinking in terms of sick infant or birth asphyxia or antenatal.
There was no birth asphyxia,
injuries.
Tushar. They have made it very clear. Abdo was very good in this chat.
Fair enough. I missed that. I'll stay with muscle involvement as of now.
This infant was more alert but continued to have marked central and peripheral floppiness. He was able to produce some anti-gravity movement in the lower limbs, and his power was good when gravity was negated. And his deep tendon reflexes continued to be normal. Now here are some clues to
So Naresh Bhai says facial involvement, weak cry, and muscle weak cry, peripheral muscles or nerves. So I would differ now that you have specifically thrown us this anti-gravity muscle situation. Because typically, again, anti-gravity movements are preserved in central hypotonia compared to peripheral hypotonia.
Right.
And when you say the power was good when gravity was negated, that again goes in favor of central hypotonia.
Right.
So either we are looking at a condition which involves central as well as peripheral involvement, or predominantly central involvement, because the deep tendon reflexes are bang normal.
Yeah.
So Prader-Willi would be one of the conditions that would still come in my mind. And I'm assuming there's no dysmorphism or any other issues like that.
Okay. He also had paucity of facial expressions, which we had inferred from the information which was given to us. He was able to suck weakly on a gloved finger and was able to swallow when fed with a syringe. He did not have any ophthalmoplegia or respiratory insufficiency.
So paucity of facial expression would either mean some of the myopathies where they have peculiar facial expressions, or myotonias, congenital myotonias where they have V-shaped face and other things. I can't think about any of them fitting into this.
You mean myotonic dystrophic?
Myotonic dystrophy.
Yeah. Right.
Anybody else? Any other comments? I can't see anything on the chat.
Subtle dysmorphic features were also noted. Now they come up with this.
Yeah.
Hypertelorism, low set ears, upturned mouth, pointed chin, high at palate, and myopathic faces. The infant also had a right-sided undescended testis.
Yeah, so now this is better. I'll wait for others to respond. So this upturned mouth is a clue, and undescended testes are a clue.
Let us see who picks them up. So here, Tushar, you would agree that all this points towards a central hypotonia. Hello?
Yeah. would have gubernaculum involvement.
Right.
The rest of the things are minimally affected.
So, hypotonia in a newborn may not have very great localizing value because it can be early symptom of an organ failure, sepsis, or metabolic dysfunction. And these conditions are frequently associated with sensorial changes as neonatal encephalopathy. Sometimes because the baby most of the time they sleep, and it becomes very difficult to comment on sensorium many a times. So uh, one has to be very careful when we are commenting on sensorium of a newborn baby. So they are very much into a sleep state in early life. So when neurological findings overlap with a normal sleep state in early hours of the birth, this may masquerade as neonatal encephalopathy. This is the point I was trying to make.
Sir, your voice is not coming through clearly.
Okay. Hypotonia and weakness are important to differentiate in the setting of poor spontaneous movements and help in localizing the pathology. The neurological examination in this infant showed a frog-like supine resting posture, decreased muscle response to stress, but with good power when gravity was negated. This is characteristic of a severe tone disturbance likely of central origin. This is the point which Tushar had already referred to. In view of the marked hypotonia, feeding problems, and cryptorchidism, a diagnosis of PW syndrome was considered for this infant. This diagnosis was confirmed with methylation-specific polymerase chain reaction testing. So now comments on this.
Yeah, so in fact, before you showed me the last slide, I was thinking either on terms of either birth asphyxia related encephalopathy versus a central cause like a Prader-Willi, because that is one of the common things.
Yeah.
But honestly, when you showed me a problem with the testes and with an upturned abnormal facial features and myopathic faces, I was thinking more in terms of congenital myopathy, though the reflexes were normal.
Right.
So it would be one of these three on my time.
So,
but
yeah,
is also one of the exceptions that we always must remember, because our image of obesity and Prader-Willi happens only later in life, and early on they are premature, small for gestational age, and thin babies who have this marked hypotonia.
I mean, feeding difficulty in the neonatal period is pronounced. So
Yes.
These children are small for date and they fail to thrive initial. The overeating and hyperphagia begins only after 1 year of age. So, and they go on to develop very abnormal behavior as far as eating is concerned. They would eat all kinds of things. They would even can eat garbages. So they develop very abnormal eating behavior in post-infancy. So most of these cases are because of deletion in the paternal gene on 15th chromosome, but some of them, 20% of them, are because of uniparental disomy, where the both the alleles are from the mother. So a disease process with severe tone disturbance can masquerade as encephalopathy in early stages of illness. Hypotonia mostly indicates a central pathology and needs to be differentiated from weakness in the setting of poor peripheral movements. And Prader-Willi syndrome is an important differential in the neonate with hypotonia.
So Dr. Jagdish and a couple of other people have also mentioned whether it could be Williams. So Williams doesn't come like this at such an early age, and Williams comes in a different presentation with hypercalcemia, murmur, happy child.
Yeah, dysmorphism is also slightly different where they could have long philtrum and they have truncoconal abnormalities, which is a common. I mean,
Dr. Priyank Patel has pointed out that myopathy reflexes are decreased, though not completely absent.
Yeah,
Yeah, Dr. Priyank Patel, I take it. Accept it as bang normal, it would straight away go for the central hypotonia rather than peripheral hypotonia.
I mean, the case scenario is trying to highlight that if a child is able to move hypotonic limbs through the hypotonia and the power is relatively preserved, then it is not a peripheral cause of, I mean, mostly it favors a central cause. So we move on to the third case now. A neonate with sudden onset of hypotonia on the second day after birth. So that implies that the baby was normal on day 1 of life. A 2-day-old 3 kg female term newborn is born by a normal delivery with good Epcor at 5-10 minutes. And next morning, she is noted to have a weak cry. Antenatal and natal findings are normal. There is no history of seizure, and there are no clinical features of respiratory distress or respiratory failure. Anybody? Okay, we'll go forward. Neurological examination shows a fully conscious neonate with decreased shoulder tone and head lag. Neonatal reflexes are also diminished with a weak cry, poor swallowing, and poor sucking reflex. Any comments, suggestions?
Family history, Dr. Naresh Bhai wants to know. Is there anything in family history?
So far, nothing is coming up. Let's see. Again, I would like Tushar had been analyzing central versus peripheral every time, which is a very good beginning process.
Yeah, so here I'll give it a shot again. Now, again here it looks more like central rather than peripheral.
Okay.
So actually there are neonatal reflexes are diminished and weak cry. It would fit anywhere. I would think more in terms of whether there is some event, whether it's an intraventricular hemorrhage or whether there is electrolyte disturbance or hypoglycemia.
I mean, there is no setting for any of these in a relatively good weight child who is
with the day 1 normal and
day 1 absolutely bang normal and then
absolutely normal and day 2 becoming bad. An acute onset would generally make me think to look for these kind of causes than any lower motor neuron causes. I mean, lower peripheral hypotonia. Sorry.
Anybody is making any attempt to comment on this?
There's one more comment. Let me just check. Sorry. Myasthenia.
Okay.
He's saying probably myasthenia.
Okay. Okay, let us see. So normal sepsis screen, metabolic evaluation, reactive protein, glucose, calcium, ionized calcium, serum magnesium, sodium, potassium, everything bang normal, and neurosonography to rule out any bleeding or malformation has normal findings.
Yeah, including head sonography, because your voice did not come through. I'm repeating.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so that rules out all the possible things that I was thinking till now.
So what is it? Any guess?
No.
No. So
We
these
are
are the,
testing for myasthenia gravis. Sorry, I don't. Okay.
these are the differential diagnoses which we have gone through, and there was nothing in the investigations to suggest. So this is what it is. The mother was found to have myasthenia, for which she was taking treatment for the past 5 years and was asymptomatic. And the laboratory results showed the presence of acetylcholine receptor antibodies with very high titers, thus confirming a diagnosis of TNMG, transient myasthenia gravis. So, two important points here: that the mother could be asymptomatic at the time when the baby presents to us, when she is on treatment, but the antibodies would cross the placenta and cause problem in the baby. And generally, these babies do not present on day 1 of life. They present on, the most common time is around day 2 of life.
So as Dr. Naresh Bhai Thakkar was saying, exactly that's why he probably wanted to know the family history,
Yeah,
and he was thinking in terms of myasthenia.
very right. Very nice conclusion.
Diagnosis,
Yeah, yeah.
Dr. Naresh Katiara has asked for a tensilon test.
Tensilon test, atrophonium is not available most of the places, and by today most commonly is done is a pyridoxine test. But in a scenario like this, where there is anticholinesterase receptor antibodies are very high, I think that becomes a kind of a suggestive kind of approach. But I don't think you would rely on that test more than the information which is available here.
He had answered because we asked what diagnostic
Acha,
test would you
okay,
like to do.
okay,
At
right.
that time, he had answered.
Sure, sure. Oral pyridoxine was given 9 milligram per kg per day with continuation of tube feeding. Showed gradual improvement in muscle tone, and on day 3 life, she began breastfeeding. And by 7 days, the child was more or less normalized and was discharged. So most of these babies would need treatment for generally 4 weeks time, and they generally improve by that time. So it's a transient problem, and most of the babies would improve. The probability that a mother with myasthenia will have a baby is around 10 to 20%, but the recurrence rate is very high for subsequent pregnancies. So transient neonatal myasthenia is an infrequently seen condition. All infants born to mothers with myasthenia need to be monitored closely for clinical manifestations. Treatment is with administration of anticholinesterase inhibitor, and usually needed for 4 to 6 weeks. Prognosis is excellent, with most neonates improving with no sequelae. So any question, any comments on this case? None?
None.
Okay. Then we move to the last case if people are still interested. Or
Just for completion's sake, there was a mention about hypermagnesemia and aminoglycoside toxicity and infant botulism. In India, we don't see botulism
at all, yeah. Never seen described, mostly from
will
US.
say no honey to be used for children below
Yeah.
1 year of age. Somehow we have, at least I haven't seen any case of botulism here, and nor have we seen or heard about aminoglycoside toxicity causing neuromuscular disorder in infants, in newborns.
Hypermagnesemia may be an odd occurrence when the mother receives magnesium infusion for
eclampsia.
Yeah.
Yeah, please go ahead, sir.
So we come to the last case, hypotonia and muscle weakness since birth in a 2-year-old boy. So something which has started in the newborn period and has progressed and continued. A 2-year-old boy presents in the clinic with hypotonia and muscle weakness since birth. He has motor developmental delay. He has never crawled. because he had difficulty in lifting his head. His mother denies any dysphagia, difficulty breathing, or seizures, and reports that he can walk for only 1 to 2 minutes and fatigues easily. His symptoms are non-progressive and improve on rest. So that is the story to begin with. He was born at 37 weeks of gestation by a CS. Mother had good antenatal care, and he was found to be hypotonic at birth. Though the mother did not conceive any reduced fetal movements, this child had a very prolonged NICU stay of 4 days for feeding difficulty and oxygen requirement. Cranial CT was done, which was normal at that time, and there was no family history of any muscle weakness. Tushar, would you like to comment or should I go ahead? The current visit shows that the child is smiling and comfortable. His 30th percentile for height and 45th centile for weight. He has diffuse muscle wasting, including and symmetrical weakness of all 4 extremities, along with a positive Gower sign and ptosis. He has postural scoliosis and waddling gait. Reflexes are normal, Babinski negative. No sign of sensory or cerebellar deficit appreciated. Any comments? Tushar?
Sorry. I was saying, Naresh bhai, please unmute yourself if you want to speak. Yeah. So I was originally thinking in terms of SMA type 2 till we reached this slide, because it looked like a slowly progressive but too early for a dystrophy in a 2-year-old child with no other abnormal findings mentioned. But now here, if we see, there is positive Gower sign as well as normal reflexes. So positive Gower sign would go in favor of a proximal muscle weakness, but here I can see face as well as muscle weakness and with ptosis. So this is a generalized muscle hypotonia and weakness, including the reflexes which are present. So this is neither dystrophy and nor your SMA. Naresh bhai?
Is he unmuted?
Yeah, he is.
Myotonic dystrophy, sir?
Myotonic dystrophy. I mean, we could have had some kind of a inverted V face, or some family history, or some history of myotonia in the mother. That is not.
And this is a progressive weakness, isn't it? Though it is present since birth. That's what my understanding is.
Yeah. Okay. So, CBC, urine organic acid level, creatinine kinase level, metabolic profile, chest X-ray, ECG, and echo are normal. He also tested for facioscapulohumeral muscular dystrophy, type 1 muscular dystrophy, short chain acyl coenzyme, medium chain acyl coenzyme, Prader-Willi, acyl carnase deficiency, hypothyroidism were all negative. And he also tests negative for autoimmune antibody mediated muscle weakness.
Oh.
stosis, I would think in terms of to rule out neuromuscular junction very properly, but that doesn't fit with this particular history.
Okay. Should I
Dr.
proceed?
Jagdish is saying to go for muscle biopsy.
Muscle biopsy. Okay. So muscle biopsy would be helpful to either differentiate between a myopathy and a dystrophy. So CPK being normal,
Both are ruled out.
Yeah. Myopathy may not be ruled out with a normal creatine kinase, but
Yeah, but even they usually they have slightly elevated levels at least. I mean, unless they are putting that as within normal.
yeah.
Correct.
So biopsy is unlikely to be helpful in this child.
Can't think of anything.
Okay.
Dr. Jagdish is saying do EMG.
Now this is the clue.
This is Brahmastra. Show us the diagnosis, sir.
Okay. He was referred to 2 different tertiary centers where he was evaluated for various metabolic disorders without any success. Then he was referred to a 3rd center where muscle biopsy and genetic studies revealed a defect in DOX7 gene. And it was a type of congenital myasthenia syndrome that affects the neuromuscular junction.
Oh.
So this is different from transient myasthenia gravis in a newborn baby, where you have a maternal antibodies crossing the placenta and causing problem on day 2 of life, which is transient, and by 4 weeks, as the antibody levels decline, the baby starts showing improvement and doesn't leave behind any sequelae. Unlike the myasthenia gravis, this is a congenital myasthenia gravis syndrome, which is a progressive disorder, and more often than not, it will, again, we have seen in Pompe's disease that the late or juvenile onset presents with limb girdle muscle weakness. Similarly, congenital myasthenia has a variable phenotype depending on the genotype of the patient. So it is very important to know the genetic constitution of the baby, because it has bearing both in prognosis, clinical presentation, and the treatment modalities employed. Sometimes this baby can present with only respiratory failure and episodes of apnea. Sometimes these babies can present with limb girdle weakness. So it's a very variable presentation, and there are 3 localizations. It could be a presynaptic, it could be synaptic, and it could be postsynaptic. And most common is the postsynaptic genetic defect, which is defect in the structure of the receptor. And the commonest mutation is the DOX7 mutation, which has been pointed out here. And the most important significance is that some of these patients deteriorate on anticholinesterase inhibitor drugs. So that is something which is very, very important to know the genotype. The DOX7 variation is likely to deteriorate if you use pyridoxine. And these babies surprisingly do exceedingly well on albuterol or ephedrine, which acts as a wonder drug in these children, and they show remarkable dramatic improvement with the use of salbutamol.
So Samarster, today you have shown us all the 3 exceptions to the rule. The first one we always teach as GSD, which does not present as GSD, presents as an acute flaccid paralysis. That is a floppy baby. That is your GST2 Pompe's.
Yeah.
The transient myasthenia, which improves, so that's also atypical. And this DOX7 gene myasthenia is the only one which actually has eye sparing effect. Though you have mentioned stosis here, but this is one of those myasthenia which has no ophthalmoplegia.
Right.
So that's the tricky part. Thank you.
And so limb girdle involvement, one must think of a juvenile or late onset Pompe's disease, as well as congenital myasthenia gravis when the patient presents to us with limb girdle weakness. And the
We got
treatment.
few more comments. Yeah, we got few more comments.
Sure.
Where Dr. Priyank Patel said that in our starting slide, you had shown improvement with rest, which I had missed.
Yeah,
At least I have missed.
yeah, that fatigability with which goes away with rest is a small pointer. Yeah.
Yeah. And Dr. Naresh says congenital myasthenia syndrome has
I missed the point. Your voice is broken.
We can't hear you. Dr. Savar?
Yeah. No, I was just asking. I missed his comment. What he said.
He said
Somebody-
congenital myasthenia syndromes have intermittent weakness.
So, as I was saying, this is an inherited disorder with no autoimmunity involved, so there will be no antibodies positive. It is a permanent disease. It is heterogeneous. It could be presynaptic, synaptic, and postsynaptic. Postsynaptic is the most common, and amongst the postsynaptic, most common is the DOX7 mutation. They present late in infancy, early childhood, and they have generalized hypotonia, and they have characteristic limb girdle weakness, which is again, unlike myasthenia, we are used to ptosis and ophthalmoplegia. And treatment depends on the genotype, and this child was started on albuterol and started walking 2 days after starting the treatment, within 2 days. And he became an avid swimmer and has become a goodwill ambassador for the Muscular Dystrophy Association for the past 3 years. And this form of treatment was discovered by one physician who, she was suffering from dysmenorrhea, and she also developed limb girdle dystrophy, distribution muscle weakness. And those days ephedrine was available over, I mean in US, now it is not available.
OTC. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and she showed great improvement with the use of ephedrine. So, since ephedrine was no longer available, they switched over to albuterol, which shows a very, very promising result. So, it's a rare but important differential diagnosis to consider for toddlers presenting with weakness and or motor delay. It is a unique subset of congenital myasthenia disorder and one of the most common causes of limb girdle weakness. Early diagnosis is important because it saves patients and their family from needless investigations, and early treatment helps patients to have normal development. So I think with this, we would end the meeting. Any other comment
There are no more comments on the chat box.
So we can leave the meeting now, stop.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Savar, Dr. Naresh Bhai, and everybody else.
I think everybody must have enjoyed it.
There are a few comments to say that they're happy and they've learned, and it was a very nice presentation.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the appreciation, and thanks to Tushar for coordinating. Thanks a lot.
Pleasure, sir. Always learning.
Thanks, sir.
Good.